The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferenc.
Teachers in Los Angeles reach a deal that includes an almost 14% salary increase and protections on artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, flight attendants launch Union Now, a nonprofit to help workers unionize. And today on the show, the president of the North American Building Trades Unions. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 21st edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Sean McGarvey will be our featured guest on the show today, and it's only appropriate because today marks the beginning of the Building Trades NABTU's Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. Sean, well, let me give you a little background. He's been on the show a couple of times with all the new listeners we get on the show on America's Workforce. I just want to fill you in on his career, and it's quite stellar. He started his building trades career with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, IUPAT. That goes back to 1981 in Philadelphia. He worked his way up through various leadership positions with the painters. If you go back to 2005, Sean was elected Secretary-Treasurer of NABTU, North American Building Trades Unions, and then in 2012, he was elected unanimously to the office of President. He is a respected, and I mean respected, union construction thought leader among labor, government, corporate, and private sectors. He's got them all. And he's dedicated his entire life to improving the economic security and career opportunities of current and future construction workers, as well as their families. NABTU.org is the website. And of course, we're going to talk about what's happening in Washington at that legislative conference today, tomorrow. It's the next couple of days. And this is the week where thousands of national, state, local building trades leaders are convening to hear Sean and a number of speakers. That includes Liz Schuler, president of the AFL-CIO. It's quite an impressive lineup. So we'll talk about that and what happens from this point. Obviously, you have these meetings, and there's a lot of outreach that goes on after that. Very, very important stuff there. We're also going to touch on artificial intelligence. And I'll tell you, this was about, I want to say 4 to 6 weeks ago, NABTU announced that they are joining forces with OpenAI to train the next generation of skilled construction workers. Now, I know a lot of workers are really scared about what's happening with artificial intelligence. It's important that artificial intelligence is embraced so workers have a seat at the table, especially in those contract talks. And I'm going to talk about something that happened in Los Angeles here in a few minutes. But this is very, very crucial, especially when it comes to building those data centers. And there's so many of them. You need a skilled workforce, and artificial intelligence is part of that. And Sean is going to address that as our featured guest on Trades Day here on America's Workforce. What a way to celebrate Trades Day with the president of NABTU. Is that cool? Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. United Teachers Los Angeles, UTLA, has reached a tentative agreement for a new 2-year contract with the Los Angeles Unified School District. This after months of negotiations. The agreement remains to be ratified by the membership, and it features an average salary increase of 13.86% with a minimum increase of 8%. Among other provisions, the agreement includes protections against AI-induced job displacement, providing that AI, this is a quote, cannot be used to replace bargaining unit positions or to surveil or share information of any employee or student. Now, this development occurred within days of Los Angeles reaching tentative agreements with two other school worker unions, the Associated Administrators Los Angeles and Service Employees International Local 99. All three unions, all of them, were set to go on strike last week. Sarah Nelson, who is president of the Association of Flight Attendants, has launched Union Now. What's Union Now? It's a nonprofit, and it's about making it possible for working people to get a union, to outweigh the boss, to be able to stand up to bosses who fire workers illegally during organizing drives, and to support recognition strikes and support contract strikes as well. Nelson explained she envisions Union Now as helping bridge the gap between the 70% of workers who want a union and the meager 10% of workers who have one. Yeah, 70% of the workers in America would like to be in a union. A lot of them are scared to even try. Nelson, who was joined by Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and New York's Mayor Zohran Mamdani, described an organizing terrain where employers' power effectively deprives workers of the right to organize. Julie Su, Deputy Mayor for Economic Justice in New York City and Secretary of Labor during the Biden administration, also spoke at that conference where they launched Union Now, adding how an NLRB hostile to workers leads to results that are predictable and devastating. And anybody involved in an organizing drive knows exactly what she's talking about. You know, we started a feature here on America's Workforce yesterday, and it's going to continue all this week and next week. 1 week from today is Workers' Memorial Day. And what we're doing, we're saluting certain times in American history that kind of changed everything when it comes to worker safety. Today, we're going to focus on 1907. And one of the darkest single days in the history of American labor. We're going underground into a West Virginia coal mine where the worst mining disaster in American history unfolded on a December morning. By the way, this segment is brought to you by our good friends at the National Labor Office at Blue Cross and Blue Shield. You know, Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, loggers, and miners. Back in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families, all working hard for America's working families and for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. The date, December 6, 1907. Monongah, West Virginia. At 10 in the morning, an explosion tore through the Fairmont Coal Company's mines, killing at least 361 men and boys in what remains the deadliest mining disaster in American history. Turns out many of the victims were recent immigrants. Some brought their sons to work that day. Well, in the weeks that followed, 3 more major mine disasters struck across the country. December 1907 became known as Black December. Listen to this. Over 3,200 miners died on the job that single year. 3,200. Well, the grief and outrage from Monongah pushed Congress finally to act. In 1910, the Federal Bureau of Mines was created, the first step toward holding this industry accountable. So those 361 men started a chain of reform that miners still benefit from today, and we owe them that acknowledgement. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Sean McGarvey, president of NABTU, North American Building Trades Unions.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferenc.
It takes LiUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LIUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
Hire union musicians. Call Music Talent of Cleveland at 216-881-1802. Call Music Talent of Cleveland as your dependable source for professional musicians in Northeast Ohio. Union musicians add harmony to weddings, elegance to parties, and uplifting music for all events. Music Talent of Cleveland contracts solo and ensemble musicians as well as bands and orchestras for single engagements. So hire union musicians. Call Music Talent of Cleveland today. 216-881-1802. America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferenc.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Well, today is a Tuesday, and every Tuesday and Thursday here on America's Workforce, we started this in March. It's Trades Day, and today we're actually featuring all of them. It's the North America Building Trades Unions, headed by Sean McGarvey. NABTU.org is their website, and today is quite significant because it's a kickoff for the annual Legislative Conference in Washington. It's all taking place at the Washington Hilton in D.C., and this is one of the nation's premier gatherings of labor, industry, and bipartisan political leadership. I say this on the show. It's important that we reach out to both sides of the aisle. Sean, welcome back to America's Workforce. And I know you've been doing this for a number of years. Why don't you tell us what this is all about, what you're trying to accomplish? And obviously, you've accomplished a whole lot. Definitely want to get into artificial intelligence. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the conference, talk to me about the conference. You've done this for many, many years. Obviously, you've been tracking the effectiveness of these conferences. I'm going to turn it over to you, brother. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, and today we start our legislative conference for the building trades. It's kind of like the Masters. It's a rite of spring, right? You know, spring has arrived when the legislative conference comes. You know, we're expecting opening day to have 3,000 plus people in the room from all 50 states. The local leadership, guests, we'll have industry leaders, contractors, clients, and then we'll have our plenary sessions where we'll have a list of speakers, both Democrat and Republican, from new Governor Mickey Sherrill in New York to Senator Schatz from Hawaii to Republican Brian Fitzpatrick from PA, Republican Mike Lawler from New York. We'll have Mayor William Scherer and Mayor Buckwitz and Allison Zagagis. Those people we're going to do a kind of a town hall format with. They're actually members who have either run for and been elected to elective office or running for elective office. And again, in a attempt to encourage more of our people to become more active in running and holding political office. So we'll have a list of speakers. On top of those, workshops in the afternoon, and then our lobby day on the Hill, where our members will fan out across the city here and go up to the Capitol and go to different agencies to meet with the policymakers elected and appointed who have direct impact on our industry and our jobs. So it's an exciting week for us.
It should be. Yeah, absolutely. Sean, like I said before, you've been doing this a long time, and I'm sure you track the effectiveness. I mean, when you go to the offices of these elected reps, I mean, you're bending their ear. What are you trying to accomplish? I know, first of all, we often say this on the show, the trades are the pathway to the middle class. It's important that we continue to grow the trades. But I'm just wondering, this year, 2026, what are you trying to accomplish?
Quite honestly, in 2026, and since Trump 2.0, we're making sure that our friends are shored up and supportive of the key policy positions that we want to maintain to benefit and protect our membership. And that's Davis-Bacon prevailing wages, that's investment in infrastructure, that's registered apprenticeship, a strong registered apprenticeship system, and that's support for project labor agreements, both public and private. This Congress has been a little different for us, different leadership in this Congress, not as engaging, I would say, with the building trades, but we certainly have, both in the House and the Senate, quite a list of important members of Congress, both in the Senate and the House, who we have longstanding relationships with, and they're our voice on Capitol Hill. So we make sure we touch base with all of them on what the latest is coming out of the building trades, in particular in their state and then national policy. And that will be, again, reaffirming our message on the things that are important to the U.S. economy and to the middle class construction industry worker in the United States, and maintaining and growing that middle class worker.
Yeah, speaking of which, I see NABTU gained over 47,000 net new members across 14 crafts last year. And this is despite the disruption here. I want to get into that in a minute. And this follows 100,000 net new members added in 2023 and 2024. Now, you go back, that was a previous administration. You know what happened with that administration, Sean. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act, which was a step in the right direction. And it was won by bipartisan support, which we need more of in Washington. My question to you, I understand there's been a little pullback on that, a couple of delays. Where do we stand with that right now? And also, offshore wind, I know that's become a contentious issue. Some of the states are picking up a little bit on that on their own. But how do you assess the situation right now?
The situation is very fluid, Ed. We've had scores of projects that had committed funding, either under the bipartisan infrastructure bill or the Inflation Act or the CHIPS bill, that have now either been paused or pulled back, or in some cases outright canceled. So that has taken quite a hit on projects that we're anticipating that, our members and future members would be working on by now or building. Some of those we've engaged in the courts to try to prevent the decisions that were made by the administration to pull back on those projects that were passed under those bills and then funded under the last administration. We've won a few, we've lost a few. We can't fight them all, but the best way to describe it is it's a fluid situation. You don't know from day to day. And it's not just us in the labor movement. It's quite honestly our partners on the contracting side and our clients that we work with, both private sector and public sector. It's very difficult to make long-range strategic plans, do procurement, put in all the necessary inputs to a project when you're not sure of a piece of the funding. And that's kind of what we're faced with right now.
Mm-hmm. Despite what you just said, we are still seeing a record amount of people entering apprenticeship programs. And there's a couple things at play here. Like I said, it's the pathway to the middle class. But I think a lot of young people today, they're taking a second look at the trades because, well, number one, it seems colleges have outpriced themselves here. And then you got a lot of college debt. And we're seeing more women, people of color, get involved in the trades for the right reasons here, because, again, it's a pathway to the middle class. I wonder if you could speak to, and I know one of the things you launched here a couple of years ago was Trades Futures, and I think that was just absolutely brilliant. But as far as this dynamic changing in America, and the things, as you know, Sean, I mean, things have to be built and rebuilt. I mean, there's a lot of the infrastructure here. We got a long way to go. But if you can speak to the apprenticeship programs here in the last couple of years and what you see ahead with what I just said.
Ed, right now we have over 300,000 people in our registered apprenticeship system across our crafts. Last year, we brought in 88,000 just in 2025. Fact of the matter is, there's a lot of discussion out there about a shortage of skilled crafts and hand wringing, et cetera, and what we're going to do, as a country to attract more people to the skilled crafts. We don't have a lot of trouble attracting people. I'll give you one example. IBW Local 26 here covers the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, the DMC area around the Capitol. Just finished up their application process. They had 5,000 applications for their apprenticeship program. They're taking 880 people out of those 5,000 into the program. So it's not a lack of people being enthusiastic about maybe taking advantage of an opportunity for a blue-collar career and with sustaining middle-class wages and benefits. It's a question of how much work there is, what the pipeline looks like, and how many people you can put into a program, because we certainly, in the building trades, we don't train people for jobs that don't exist. And on the other hand, when we listen to the fears of some of our clients and others out there, we don't make widgets. They're not put on a shelf, and they're not just in time delivered to a job site with the skill sets that are required for them to be productive. It's an earn as you learn system, as you know, Ed, and that requires commitment on the client side and the contractor side that their labor strategy is going to be a union labor strategy. And when they treat labor as an input like they do long-term procurement, they might be ordering material. Turbine for a power plant today takes between 3 and 5 years from the time you order it till it's delivered to the job site. Well, if we had 3 years in advance of a job going forward, knowing that we were going to be the ones who were going to build that job, we could get the workforce lined up and ready for that project. Unfortunately, what generally happens is one of the last decisions that a client, a contractor make is what the labor strategy on the job is going to be, whether it's going to be a open shop job, merit shop, or a union job. When you wait that long in the process, it makes it that much more difficult to procure the workforce and make sure you have them lined up for the project. So we've been fortunate. We've got a lot of great clients that we work for out there. I can think of a couple of TVA, Southern Company, Constellation. There's just 3 examples in the power generation industry, and I can tell you that we know what they're going to build over the next 10 years. That's how intimate the relationship is and the commitment to the building trade. So it's much, much easier for us, knowing what their capital investments and their maintenance needs are going to be for 10 years, to procure a workforce and make sure we have it locally domiciled and ready to go when they need them. There's lots of new entrants into the construction industry who don't, quite honestly, have a lot of experience with this part of it and don't really understand the human capital part of it. They understand their technology, they understand their financing, they understand their approval processes to get shovels in the dirt, but they don't spend much time at this point thinking about where the workforce is going to come from. And that requires getting engaged with us and getting engaged with us early on in the process so we can solve that problem for them.
I can speak to what's going on in Central Ohio with data centers, Facebook, Google, Intel, and all that. But do you see this trend continuing pretty much around the country when it comes to the trades?
Yeah, I mean, this is historically, how it happens now. I will say that, 5,000 applicants in Local 26 is probably higher because it's becoming more and more of a desirable position as jobs are eliminated in other industries. People are attempting to make a horizontal move economically. So that's increasing our numbers. But again, even in Ohio, Ed, to give an example, the Intel project, we negotiated the agreement on the Intel project. We did that a year in advance before any dirt was moved on that project. So we already knew we were going to build that project. We had an agreement in place, and the local trades worked to put together their workforce and manpower development plans to meet the needs of Intel on that job. There are other data centers, major data centers that are going to be built, and then power adjacent to those data centers to fire them in Ohio, where we think we're probably going to build those, but we don't have paper that's can be used in a court of law to hold accountable when a commitment is made that if the project gets built, it's built with us. So it's very difficult for business managers and their co-parts on their joint apprenticeship training funds to make decisions on how many people to bring into a program when they don't have a concrete look at what the future projections for the workforce in their particular craft is needed. And listen, we're used to, in the construction industry, projects being on the books for a long time and then never actually getting built, when it comes to final investment decisions on projects that are done very late in the game after a lot of procurement, a lot of engineering and other things are done that they decide not to go forward. We can deal with that. But the amount of power and the amount of data and AI work, particularly in places like Ohio, the earlier they make a commitment to us, the more comfortable we are in making sure that we put the plans in place to do the workforce recruitment, because at the end of the day, that's what we really are. We're workforce recruitment and deploying organizations to meet the needs of the client and the contractor. The earlier they can do that, the better we're going to perform.
Our featured guest today, Sean McGarvey, president of NABTU, North America Building Trades Unions, NABTU.org. Today is a kickoff of their annual legislative conference in Washington, D.C. Sean, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about your partnership with OpenAI, joining forces to train the next generation of skilled construction workers. Back in a few minutes. You're listening to America's Workforce.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LIUNA to power North America with affordable energy. The men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, have the skills needed to build and maintain oil, natural gas, nuclear, solar, and wind projects that are shaping America's energy future. From new energy tech to retrofitted facilities, LIUNA members do it all. Find out what it takes to be powered by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's LIUNA.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org. The Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council, consisting of 8 ironworker local unions in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. We build the skylines and bridges along the Great Lakes. With more work than ever before, the Great Lakes District Council is actively searching out the next great ironworker. Whether it's building the next Intel plant or constructing a bridge to safely connect our great cities along the lake. So join the Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council today. Find out how and learn more about the council by visiting iwdistrictcouncil.com.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferenc with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. When you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. Always appreciate those 5-star ratings. So Please keep them coming. Also appreciate the fact that you as a listener of America's Workforce, I've been doing this show, my gosh, it's going to be 28 years this summer. We are for 3 years in a row the #1 union podcast in all of America. There's a lot of podcasts, well over 2 million. And we're #1 union podcast in America. Everything archived on awpodcast.com. Often say it's because of the guests we bring to the show, and we've got Sean McGarvey, president of North America's Building Trades Unions, joining us. And this is the kickoff. Today is a kickoff of their annual legislative conference in Washington. Sean, I'm so glad we're talking here because I saw this story. I reported this on the show, I would say probably about a month ago, and that's the partnership with OpenAI, NABTU and OpenAI joining forces. You got to talk to me about this because I was excited to read it. I'm sure you were excited to make it happen. How did it happen? Did they come to you? You go to them? Why don't you explain all that to our listeners? Go ahead.
They reached out for us. Of course, we're working in and around on capital projects that they're building. They know that we already had a memorandum of understanding with Microsoft in place, and they were interested in the amount of capital that they're going to put up, that they would have a partner who could do the workforce development, who could help in the community, who come from the community where the project's going to be built, create an atmosphere where there's a pipeline for local people through that capital investment to get into our training programs via our trade futures and apprenticeship readiness programs and directly into our registered apprenticeship programs in the area. So they create win-wins for the local community, the local community's economy, and us. So lots of conversation about capacity, what we can do. They kicked the tires, took it out for a test drive, and recognized that we operate the biggest workforce development construction operation in the world. These data centers are very heavy on total numbers of craft people on a project and the skill sets required. And when you're the only one that can really do it, it makes sense to partner up. But there's lots of things that we do, Ed. I think, as you know, besides the actual construction, boots on the ground, putting that project together, we're, like I said, we and our members, we live in the communities where these projects are going to be built. These projects don't just require the financing, land acquisition, the long-term procurement. They actually require something that the federal government and state government can't supply, and that's local approval. That means in counties and townships across the United States where they want to build, at the end of the day, it's the local people who actually make the final decision of whether they're going to allow them to build there or not. And having a partnership with the building trades on the ground locally enhances chances for those projects to be approved because of our long-standing, in many cases, generational standing in communities where we're known, as the lectors at church, as the softball coaches, as the scout leaders for generations. So people trust us, and when we can explain to the people that this is not going to be a situation which is going to harm the environment. It's not going to be a situation where it's going to increase dramatically your electrical bills. It's not going to require tons of water usage, that these are reputable companies that are interested in long-term productive relationships as a corporate neighbor in a community. We go a long way on that piece of it. As opposed to somebody parachuting in who's not a lone local entity. So that's the one part of it. The workforce development part of it's another. And then having the ability to change as these technologies are constantly changing, supply the workforce on an ongoing basis as the technology changes, sometimes by the year, sometimes by 6 months, sometimes by the quarter. It changes so quickly. We make sense for a lot of different reasons to be partnered with, and not just for the last best thing you get from the building trades, which is the most highly skilled, most productive, safest craft workforce in the world. There's a lot more that we bring to the table, and OpenAI and others have recognized that and are recognizing that. And it's good to be partnered with the building trades.
Well, when you're dealing with something this complicated, you need a skilled workforce. Obviously, it makes all the sense in the world to have a partnership like this. Sean, I have to ask you this. There's a lot of people. What we're talking about is the future here. That's exactly what we're talking about. There's a lot of workers that are scared about about AI. I mean, I'm seeing that every day here on the show. You see a lot of negotiators and contracts wondering if AI is going to take their job away. The other part of this, you mentioned the communities, and we're seeing a lot of that pushback happen here. I'm just wondering, with this partnership, is that part of what we're dealing with as far as getting out to the communities and saying what you just said to me here on America's Workforce? Yet, don't be scared of this. This is going to help you down the road. Is that part of the game plan here?
Honestly, and you've heard some of the leaders like Sam Altman and others in big tech say AI is going to cause disruption in our workforce. There's no question about it. And what's a big change from as we've had technological advancement before is that this one's going to affect the white collar worker a lot more than the blue collar worker. Now, so there's going to be job displacement, and some of those folks are coming into our programs. This has already started. They're coming to the building trades, but also it's not total displacement. And you got 70% of the workforce, as an example, has been used to me, that's going to remain. And because of the advances in AI and the tools that they're going to be using in their jobs, they're going to be much more productive, which will require less workers. But always as technology's advanced, I mean, look, in the AFL-CIO, back in the last century, we had a buggy whipper makers union, okay?
Right.
That was a real union that had real members and real collective bargaining agreements. We don't make many buggy whips in the United States anymore. So new industries are going to be created. It's up to us to help organize them, make sure they're middle-class, family-sustaining industries economically. And the fact of the matter is that, Ed, we're as difficult as some of these answers to the questions are. We're in a Cold War with China right now. And whoever wins this AI data race is going to maintain their place or become, and I'm betting on maintaining our place as the economic superpower in the world. That's why it's so important that these companies have partnerships and community engagement and make sure that folks that, they're going to invest this capital in are part of it from the very beginning, getting away from some of the secrecy that's done, being a little more transparent, and know, what the end game is. And when it comes to the use of AI across all industries, there is a fail stop and a full stop for folks. And this is where I would caution, and I've told my Republican friends and my Democratic friends here in Washington, there's lots of activity in states trying to deal with this issue, but this is going to take a federal response. And right now there is no, and I'm not aware of any group, a bipartisan group, working on a long-term plan on how we take care of people who are negatively affected by this technological revolution for their income and for the family. And that's where we've been talking to them and calling on them to, yes, fight all your fights you have to fight. But this is something that's in the long-range best interest of the country, that we have a plan in place for when this really takes off so that nobody gets left behind. And at this point, they're behind in putting the plan together. That needs to be done. It needs to be being worked on today, and it needs to be put out there so that people can have some confidence that if they are affected in a negative way with their occupation, with their job in the industry that they work, that there's a plan in place where they and their family are going to transition into a new industry or an older industry that has opportunity, and they're not going to get hurt. And that's a requirement of policymakers to do that. And we're calling on them, from the administration to Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate. They ought to be post haste getting to work on that plan.
Well, this announcement came in early March when OpenAI and NABTU announced that they are going to work together to help ensure that the construction of AI-related infrastructure supports, number one, union careers, strengthens union registered apprenticeship programs, and lastly, creates economic opportunity in the communities where the infrastructure is built. One more question here before you go. Is this like a multi-year deal? I mean, is there a contract here with OpenAI? I'm just wondering what's in place right now to secure the future here, Sean.
Well, what we do is we have a national committee, and we have representatives from across the crafts who will work with representatives of AI, OpenAI, just like we do with Microsoft, identify opportunities that they're looking at, look at the feasibility of the workforce that's contained in that geographic area, look at the opportunity to on-ramp people through our apprenticeship infrastructure in that area, and then put a plan together on a project-by-project basis. Are we going to be a perfect fit everywhere? Quite honestly, we're not. Will we be a good fit most places? Yes, we will. And even in the places where we're not a perfect fit, we'll be part of the fit. So it's an ongoing dialogue. They understand that their original commitment was to invest $500 billion, which is just an ungodly amount of money. That's a lot of man hours. That's a lot of work. That's going to require a lot of people. So it is a more collaborative daily communication in some cases as we get closer to them making decisions on projects, working together so that we can make commitments and uphold our commitments to OpenAI and others when it comes to the final investment decisions, and then moving forward when they get their permitting with building these structures with the unionized building trades.
Amazing. Truly amazing. Well, congratulations on making that happen. And definitely, I'd like to have you back on the show to talk more about the development of that partnership. Sean McGarvey, our featured guest here on America's Workforce today. Again, today's a kickoff of their legislative conference where thousands, actually about 3,000, national, state, local building trades leaders convening at the Washington Hilton for the next couple of days. Sean, you take care. Stay safe. Let's keep in touch. Okay, brother?
All right. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be with you, Ed.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up tomorrow, the Ohio Federation of Teachers and SAG-AFTRA. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.